Welcome back to CBC News BC on this beautiful Friday. I'm Jessica Chung here in the Vancouver newsroom. Okay, here's what you need to know today. A criminal investigation is underway in connection with the fire that tore through 3 buildings in East Vancouver earlier this week, as Vancouver police say the fire may have been set intentionally. Now, police say they've got evidence from Vancouver Fire who alerted them that something didn't look right in their investigation. Now, the 3-alarm blaze broke out at around 4 a.m. on Wednesday near Hastings and Nanaimo. No one was hurt, but Hastings Street was closed for several hours, and 3 businesses were impacted by the fire: a meat shop, a restaurant, and a footwear store. And now to Haida Gwaii, where a 32-year-old man has been arrested following a suspicious death this week. Now, a pedestrian was hit by a vehicle in Skidegate on Tuesday in what police believe was a targeted incident. Now, the man killed has been identified as Luke Pearson, and investigators are now treating the death as a homicide. And the Vancouver police chief is responding to allegations that arrest quotas were issued on the downtown east side. Now, an anonymous whistleblower claiming to be a VPD officer wrote to the office of the Police Complaints Commissioner saying Task Force Barrage was a politically motivated crackdown. But Chief Constable Adam Palmer denies this.
We have no quotas for Task Force Barrage, and I've been a police officer in this city for 37 years. I remember when I came on the job in the late 80s, we had some quotas back then for tickets and a couple of other different things back like in the 80s. I haven't seen quotas in the VPD for over 30 years.
Now, an investigation is underway and a full report is expected at the next police board meeting in June. And campers can now reserve campsites at many BC parks, but people with accessibility needs say they face extra barriers when booking a spot. Now, they say the BC Parks website does say they have accessible sites, but lacks specifics like where they are.
But if we look at the map on the website, none of them are identified. So I can't easily reserve a site near a washroom, which is what I would need. It was quite frustrating and disheartening, actually. Sorry. Yeah, it's difficult when you're trying to do something so simple and you can't access the information.
Now, the province says BC Parks has been building more accessible facilities for many years and says it continues to make upgrades. And what a night it was for Vancouver Whitecaps fans. Now, they came out on top against Inter Miami last night, winning 2-0 in the first leg of the CONCACAF Champions Cup semifinal and in front of a record crowd at BC Place. Here's a look at that second goal that sealed the win.
Sabi, marvelous. Ngando, back for Sabi. Nelson's there as well. Jaden Nelson slips it in. Sabi, the loose ball. Sebastian Berhalter!
And after much anticipation, soccer legend Lionel Messi did end up taking the pitch last night, nearly a year after he was a no-show in a game against the Whitecaps at BC Place. Now, the teams now head to Florida for the second leg of the semifinals on April 30th. And that's it for me. I am Jessica Chung, and you are watching CBC News BC. Don't go anywhere. Stay tuned because BC Today is up next.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us here on Friday, April 25th. It is the home stretch for this election, with all candidates making a big push in the final days. With the threat of tariffs and annexation, President Trump has played a big role in who might become our next prime minister, but BC is also a battleground when it comes to the winner. But what issue is top of mind for you as you head to vote? What matters the most when it comes to making your choice? I'm Amy Bell in for Michelle Elliott. This is BC Today. Thank you for joining us on radio, TV, and live stream. You can call us now on our top story of the day. Why are you voting? And what election issues matter to you the most? Our number is 604-669-3733. You can also call 1-800-825-5950 or hit pound 690 on your cell phone if it's safe to do so. You can also email us anytime, bctoday@cbc.ca. Federal leaders now have 3 days left to make their final pitch to voters before Election Day this Monday, April 28th. The final weekend of the campaign will be full of high-intensity campaigning.
So one of the questions on Monday is, imagine what we could do together over the next few years with a strong mandate.
Send New Democrats to Ottawa, and we will fight back and defend what you hold dear. We will fight back for you.
Well, I've got news for Mark Carney. Canadians are ready for change. We're ready for a hopeful future. We're going to bring home the Canadian promise.
The leaders are now crisscrossing the country, turning their attention to the critical battlegrounds. That will be key to determining the outcome of Monday's vote. So let's catch you up now on some of those final pitches from the leaders, starting with Liberal leader Mark Carney. Today, we found him in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. He continues to answer questions about his March 28th phone call with U.S. President Donald Trump. Our colleagues at Radio-Canada reported Trump using the term 51st state during that call, but Carney later told reporters that the U.S. president respected Canadian sovereignty. He offered some clarification today.
What's most important in a discussion, a meeting, is the conclusions of the meeting. The conclusions of this discussion with the president were clear, that he respected Canada as a sovereign country, that we will meet as two sovereign nations, the Prime Minister and the President, after Monday's election, to have comprehensive discussions about the economic and security partnership. I advised him that we would be retaliating against any auto tariffs, which we did. I know how we can give each other far more than any Americans can take away. And I know how, as America retreats from the world, Canada can lead it. So this Monday, Canadians will choose who stands up for them as their Prime Minister. And I'm asking for your vote, for positive reasons, regardless of which party you voted for in the past. I'm asking for your vote to stand up to Donald Trump, to build a united Canada, to build Canada strong.
With just days to go before Canadians head to the polls, U.S. President Donald Trump has once again ramped up his 51st state rhetoric. He sat down with Time magazine where he discussed Canada's sovereignty, and he said he is, quote, not trolling, unquote, Canada with his 51st state comments. Now, Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre, like the other leaders, are insisting upon Canada's independence. And we found him in Saskatoon today, promising 100 days of change if he gets elected as Prime Minister.
So that you can afford food and housing. Change so you're safe on your streets. Change so that we reverse liberal economic weakness and bring home our jobs. Change is what we need now more than ever. After a lost liberal decade of rising costs and crime, we can't afford a fourth liberal term. This liberal path not only means more poverty and hunger and helplessness and homelessness, but it also means more divisions in our country. After the lost liberal decade of rising costs, crime, and division, We can't afford a fourth Liberal term. We need a change that will bring home an affordable, safe life and a united and strong Canada. That's the change we're running on, and that is the change we're going to deliver in the first 100 days. Let's bring it home.
And to the NDP now, where leader Jagmeet Singh spoke to reporters and voters in Toronto this morning. He spoke about his party committing to protecting funding for healthcare, childcare, and pharmacare. Singh took aim at Carney's Liberals and his plan to balance the operating budget, saying it would lead to $28 billion in cuts. He is promised to hold the line against the parties in power and emphasized what the NDP can bring to the table in Parliament.
Carney's plan to achieve that would mean massive cuts. So you got Liberals confirming that this would be massive cuts. You got Mr. Carney saying it himself many times. I'm going to give you one specific time on February 16th in an interview he said it. And then his platform confirms $28 billion in cuts. And then on top of that, just a couple days ago on Monday, he said he would exceed those cuts. The only way he achieves his plan and to achieve the cuts that he's laid out is to massively cut services. And those services include healthcare and a whole bunch of other services. And if you want to stop those cuts, the only ones dedicated to defending our public universal healthcare and fighting back against those cuts are New Democrats. And so if you send us to Ottawa, if you got the power now in this election, you got the power to send us to Ottawa, we're going to hold the line on the things that matter most to Canadians. We're going to fight to keep Canada, Canada. We're going to fight back against the cuts. We're going to stand up and say Canada has to work for the people who work in this country, who build this country. That's who it's got to work for.
Indeed, it will be a very busy weekend of campaigning for all candidates across the country. And while a record number of advance voters have already made up their minds, there are still 3 days until many of you make your final decision on Monday. So we want to know, why are you voting? What campaign issues matter the most to you in this election? Call us at 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, pound 690 on your cell phone. And you can email bctoday@cbc.ca. Joining us now is Michael Prince, a political scientist at the University of Victoria, a social policy and public administration expert, and disability advocate. Hello, Michael. Welcome to BC Today.
Hello. Happy to be on the show.
And we've got lots of calls already, so we'll get to those in just a sec. But I just wanted to get your thoughts on the election campaign so far.
Well, it's been quite remarkable. Compared to others in the past, this has been a relatively short one. This is the briefest number of weeks that we allow under our Elections Act for a federal campaign. But it also feels like a long campaign in many ways. I mean, there's been a lot that's happened. Just the remarkable resurrection of the Liberal Party's fortunes nationally in the polls, when just a few months ago, it looked like they were going to be sent by Canadians out into the political wilderness for a good number of years. And with the appointment of Mr. Carney, or election of Mr. Carney as the Liberal Party leader, and then with the Donald Trump effect, which you mentioned in your opening remarks, there's really been a dramatic shift. And we're seeing as you say, very vigorous campaigning right till Monday. No one's taking this for granted. Everyone's fighting hard in different parts of the country for where they see some key advantages for either holding seats or trying to win new seats in different parts of Canada. And
I agree. It feels like it's been a lot longer than it has, just because so much has happened. And I think there's almost a sense of holding your breath for the weekend, because it does feel like anything could happen up until the very last minute. Other than Trump and his tariffs, and of course, the threat of annexation, that has sort of taken the biggest headlines. But what are some of the other biggest issues that you think people have been considering?
Well, I think you can hear it in the remarks by certainly Mr. Poilievre and Mr. Singh, wanting to remind Canadians of concerns that we had before Donald Trump came back into the White House: issues of affordability, issues of housing, cost of living for your weekly household food bills, concerns about the healthcare system, other social programs and public services that are important to the well-being and lives of Canadians. And the challenge has been that every time Mr. Trump has spoken up, the focus shifts back to that Canada-U.S. relationship, the concern about tariffs, which with great uncertainty as to what they're going to be, when they're going to go on, are they going to be on pause? do they hit all of the Canadian sectors or not? So he really has been, through his unpredictability, the constant in this campaign. And it's been hard, I think, for other parties. And I should mention also Elizabeth May and the Green Party, who I think they've had an impact in that their fortunes have fallen in the polling as well nationally. The ability to get conversations focused on climate change. We had the carbon tax axed by Mr. Carney right at the beginning of his appointment as Liberal leader. And that kind of took away from the Conservatives one of their central campaign platforms about axing the tax. But it also really said, I think, to a lot of us that Canadian opinion about support for the carbon tax and for vigorous climate action change by governments had softened. And so I think that's been a real challenge for the Green Party to find a place and a space in people's conversations and thoughts about what are the most important issues to them. It's clearly not polling or tracking as strongly as many people would have thought just a few months ago.
No, it has been quite a shift just over the last several weeks. I do want to get some calls in. We've had so many, and we'll be bringing them in throughout the hour. We'll head to Yvonne in Victoria. Hi, Yvonne.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. So, are you going to be voting, and what's getting you to the ballot this week?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to vote for Mr. Poilievre because earlier this week he said that he was going to reduce the tax, and when you reduce the tax too much, you don't have no more services. And he always wants to take away the help to the people in the world that need a lot of help. He wants to take away their help.
Okay.
And yes, and he has no plan for the environment. He wants to drill, and he is just too much like. I am afraid of him because he's just too much like Trump. And I'm going to vote NDP because NDP, we need some government that will take care of the people. The people are suffering.
All right, Yvonne, I really thank you for that opinion. And Michael, that leads to a question I do want to ask you. Yvonne being in Victoria, and she says she is going to vote NDP. But on Vancouver Island, it seems that the Conservatives could take a lot of ridings from the NDP. I'm curious if you think, are there issues that are resonating more closely with working class voters, or is this just that the Conservatives can really benefit from sort of a vote split between the NDP and the Liberals?
Well, Mr. Poilievre, after he became leader back in 2022, he's visited Vancouver Island several times, and even during the campaign, and he's back here today. He's going to be up in the New Spey holding a rally, and he's visited Nanaimo, I think, at least 4 or 5 times in the last 6 months leading up to the election and during the campaign. We haven't really seen that kind of attention by a Conservative leader on the island in decades.
No, it's been quite remarkable.
He's looking at possibly taking 2, 3, maybe as many as 4 seats away from seats that the NDP currently hold on the island. There's 7 ridings on Vancouver Island. 6 of them currently are NDP, and the 7th is held by Elizabeth May as the Green leader in Saanich Gulf Islands. And so the Liberals are liking their chances on the southern part of the island, but certainly in the mid to northern ridings on the island, you're right, it's kind of an orange versus blue battle there.
Yeah.
And the question is how much the Liberals may be a spoiler or not, or maybe they'll benefit from a split. But the polls are suggesting that traditional support for the NDP on this stronghold is down. And we can see that even in the mainland. So again, I expect to see Mr. Singh swing through these ridings one more time, if for nothing else, to kind of hold the line and do some damage control.
We'll take a call now from Thomas in Vancouver. Hi, Thomas.
Hey there.
And so,
go ahead.
Yeah, no, you go ahead. Just want to know, what's getting you out to vote and what issues matter to you the most?
Well, I already voted, but I have a couple of questions because I like to think of myself as a critical thinker, but I'm hearing all this rhetoric, and I have a question. Under which prime minister and under which government in the last who knows how long have prices on anything gone down? And it just hasn't. This is how stuff works. And then So here I'm blaming the last 10 years. I'm thinking, what about the 10 years before that of the Harper Conservatives and how horrible that was? And that was the impetus to bring in a change then with Trudeau. And I'll tell you another thing. I went to see Mark Carney talk, and we are getting a heck of a deal because not only did he impress me, I had to lay eyes on him and hear him talk, but his wife as well, who's an economist, a smart cookie. We're getting a twofer here. And yeah, we just need someone who has that kind of calm, cool, collect to get us through the next 3 years and not get us sold to the United States. And one more last thing. Mm-hmm. Canada isn't broken. We are not an impoverished nation. We are fortunate to live here, and we are fortunate to have the things that this country has given us. And I'm sick of listening to the rhetoric especially from Paul Hubert, telling us how bad it is, because it's just not that way. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that, Thomas. And yes, Mark Carney's partner is incredibly well accomplished in her own right. Michael, he pointed out something that, many people have also pointed out, that to a certain degree, we can never blame everything on a government, as it's all cyclical. Once a government is in charge for so long, they get blamed and people want change, and so the cycle continues. Is that why we're seeing Poilievre taking such an early lead?
The polls showed that, I think I won't use the word honeymoon, but the support for Mr. Trudeau and his approval ratings, really started to decline shortly after the 2019 election. And when he then had a snap election again in 2021, we basically got a status quo result. Nothing really changed. And his polling numbers, both for himself as prime minister and for his party, the Liberals, really started to decline. And a gap opened up consistently between the Liberals and the Conservatives, basically over the last 2.5 years. And it was a substantial, if you'd asked me in December what was going to happen in the federal election this year, I would have said a Poilievre majority government. And then we got the dramatic turn of events in Mr. Trudeau resigning, Mr. Carney getting elected as leader, Donald Trump coming back into the White House. And we knew it was going to be a rocky relationship with Mr. Trump, but none of us, I think, really foresaw the intense, aggressive attention paid by the President of the United States towards Canada and saying incredibly insulting and threatening things about us, and then attacking us through tariffs and trade. So that really shifted the dynamics. But to Thomas's point about prices, prices can come down. They can come down when you've got robust competition and choices for consumers. And we're seeing now a shift in your own grocery stores. You're seeing products from different parts of the world, perhaps you didn't see before. If you're not thinking of buying American products, fruit, for example, we're seeing fruit coming in from all sorts of parts of the world. Certainly in my shopping stores that I've never seen before. Secondly, a recession can bring down prices, but no one's really wanting to see that. The third is wage and price controls. And the last time that happened was back in the 1970s under Pierre Trudeau. That's a rather blunt. Prices do tend to gravitate up over time. They fluctuate. But that issue around affordability is a real issue in this election. And it hasn't gotten maybe as much attention as Mr. Poilievre was hoping for. But I think it's going to be, a relevant issue to a lot of your listeners as to how they think about whether they've already voted in the advance polls or whether they're thinking about how to mark the X on Monday.
We've got time for another call before we have to break for news. But William in Port Hardy. Hi there, William.
Yeah, hello. I'd like to give, I won't take much time because I'm in my 95th year and I have to give the young people a chance to use up your valuable half hour.
We want to hear from everybody of all ages.
Yeah, but look, why should I vote? I was NDP all my life, but this time I have voted Conservative. I have already voted. They have had 9 years, and look what they have done to housing. It is unforgivable what they have done to our young people with housing. So let's get the Conservatives a chance. Okay, that's all I want to say.
All right.
As I say, the NDP could have at any time called a shot and said we had enough. No, they didn't. stay in power. They left their job, but we have to give the Conservatives a chance this time.
All right. I thank you for
All
sharing.
the best out there. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that, William in Port Hardy. And Michael, that's sort of the opposite of what we've heard. Somebody is choosing to go to the Conservatives, because they have felt that the Liberals have put us in an untenable position and that they want that change. I'm going to read an email that we received from Anne. She says, I am concerned about the next generation who have to try and fix the negative impacts of climate change, drilling more holes, building more pipelines, and ignoring the real consequences of climate change, like wildfires, floods, heat domes, and maybe even earthquakes and changes in weather. They are only going to make things worse. And another one from Lenora. She says, the generalizations made by pundits such as David Fromm and others that seniors are voting Liberals to protect their wealth troubles me greatly. Intricate, highly informed, and workable plans for housing, job creation, resource management, education, and environmental management, not to mention protecting Canadian sovereignty, are all clearly explained in Mr. Carney's platform. I see 45-minute interview with Dr. G. I care deeply about the younger folks in our country, and they deserve an intelligent long-term policy plan. So Liberals, absolutely. Cheers. And as I said, that was from Lenora. And Neil says, vote to show DJ that Canadians are, I think that means Donald Trump, that Canadians are invested. And that is from Neil Sparks in Victoria. We've been here with Michael Prince, a political scientist with the University of Victoria. He will be with us right after the news. It is 12:27. This is BC Today. And yesterday, we did ask how important the environment and Canada's energy sector were to you in this election. Here's some of what you had to say. Jacqueline wrote, I'm a 55-year-old mom to a teen and a young adult. I'm very happy that the Liberal Party is being led by Mark Carney. However, I am disgusted that neither NDP, Liberals, or the Conservatives ran on a pro-environment platform. I want my children to have a future in Canada, which includes clean air, drinkable tap water, and a functioning ecosystem. The fact that none of these parties have done this resulted in forcing my hand to vote for the Green Party. And Doreen said, the environment is very important for me and my family. Our planet is losing resiliency and important resources faster than many people realize. Howard wrote, I've been paying quite close attention to the election coverage, and from what I've heard, the party leader who stands out the most on this subject is Pierre Poilievre. His apparently total negation of any policies to fight the climate crisis is stunning. He has just stopped short of saying drill, baby, drill, to which I would say burn, baby, burn. And that is from Maureen. And Maureen says, I've already voted and I don't feel good about it. I'm a member of the Green Party and I voted Liberal for the first time in my life. The last time I voted for the Greens, the incumbent NDP candidate lost his seat. I felt I did not have that option this time. It took me a long time once I got into the voting booth. I considered voting NDP, but in the end I had to vote Liberal. We need proportional representation. Thank you to everyone that emailed us. And this is BC Today on CBC Radio 1, CBC Television, and live streaming on our website, cbc.ca/BC. It is 12:30 and time for the CBC News with Stephanie Mercier.
Good afternoon. In the news, police on Haida Gwaii say they have arrested a 32-year-old man in connection with a suspicious death this week. RCMP say a pedestrian was struck by a vehicle Tuesday afternoon and later died. Police are calling that a targeted incident and say they've now deemed the death a homicide. The Major Crimes Unit has been deployed. In Vancouver, a fire in East Vancouver Wednesday morning is now being treated as suspicious. The blaze broke out on East Hastings Street and damaged 3 buildings. No one was hurt. The Vancouver Police Department now says information received by the Fire Rescue Service indicates the fire may have been intentionally set. And BC Hydro says it has hit a major milestone by tripling its electric vehicle charging network over the past year. It says there are now 591 charging ports across the province. The utility says it's also opened 22 new hubs located in every region of the province, which feature multiple charging ports. BC Hydro says it is aiming to expand the network to 800 ports by next spring. And that's a look at the CBC News. Looking now at the BC weather. Along the north coast, becoming a mix of sun and cloud with a high of 10. For the Peace region and the central interior, a mix of sun and cloud and a chance of showers, a high up to 18. For the southeast, sunny, a high of 22. For the southern interior, mainly sunny with a high of 24. And along the south coast, sunshine today, a high of 17 near the water, 25 inland, and up to 21 degrees in Victoria. Now back to Amy Bell.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. And of course, in case you haven't been paying attention, the federal election only 3 days away. And CBC's Stephen Quinn went to the federal riding of Cloverdale-Langley City to see what's on the minds of voters there. It is a riding that was held by the Liberals until a by-election last December when Conservative MP Tamara Jansen was voted in.
Do you want to talk to me about what matters to you? What do you think of what you've been hearing so far in these campaigns? Have you been hearing anything, or have you been following it at all?
Well, I would say what we are currently doing is not working. My husband and I are fighting to maintain our middle-class lifestyle when he is like a very reasonable earner.
Where are you getting squeezed the most?
Rent and food. We go to a Christian bookstore here in town, and the prices are good there.
I have a physical disability, I'm autistic, and I raise 3 children, and my rent is $3,500. So, you know, if housing was reasonable and there was better housing available for affordability, then we would have more money for doing other things, right?
Yeah.
Like taking our families out and, you know, having quality time and happy times.
And as being a small business owner, it's important for me to look after myself. And who's going to look after me? So obviously I'm hoping for the party that actually can help us with subsidies.
And we are back with our guest, Michael Prince, a political scientist from the University of Victoria. Michael, thank you for sticking with us. Of course, we want to know, what are you voting for and what issues matter the most to you? Call us at 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, pound 690 on your cell phone, or email bctoday@cbc.ca. I'm going to head straight to the calls, Michael, and hear from Tirdad in Victoria. Hi, Tirdad. How are you?
Good afternoon.
And so what are your thoughts of voting?
Yeah, I am a working class person living paycheck to paycheck, and I cannot afford to lose the gains we made in the last government. In the last government, NDP was holding the balance of the power, and they squeezed pharma care and dental care out of a minority liberal government. And I cannot afford to lose them with a conservative government, because Conservative Party is nothing but a front for the corporation, and they believe in privatization. And eventually, I would have loved to have a coalition government forming a unity government in the time of crisis, the Liberal, NDP, and the Green, and eventually bringing democracy to this country by giving us electoral reform and proportional representation.
All right, thank you for that, Tirdad. And Michael, he wants to keep all of those gains that we made, and is hoping for a minority Liberal government with the NDP helping out. But the NDP, the party itself, in a far different position heading into this election than they were in the last one. Where does that leave the NDP?
Absolutely. Clearly, the NDP made a difference and were important in the last 2 parliaments. We had a minority government elected after the 29 general election. We had another one in 2021. So over that period, particularly since the 2021 to 2025 Parliament, we saw, significant gains, as the caller noted, Dentacare, Pharmacare, and some other social programs and public initiatives. The polls, though, right from early on in this campaign, Amy, have shown that certainly the Liberals are within reasonable grounds of a majority government. So it's made it more difficult for Mr. Singh to make the same case to voters, although it's reasonable that he is trying to do that and remind people of the achievements and contributions that the NDP made to the quality of life of many Canadians in the last Parliament or so.
Dental and child care and pharmacare,
Yes.
is a lot that they did push forward.
Yeah, and so what you're hearing from Mr. Poilievre a message of change. You're hearing from Mr. Carney a message of competence and capacity, and you're hearing from the NDP a message of continuity, of hold the programs, and that's exactly what this caller. So it's an interesting, people are getting different choices, and so there are different strategies, there's different messages, and behind them are these ideas of change, competence, or continuity, or kind of ways I might sum them up in terms of some of the key choices facing voters across the country.
All right. We're going to get a call in from Robert in Brentwood Bay. Hi, Robert.
Oh, good afternoon.
And so why are you voting in this election?
Oh, I think it's the most important election that I'm ever voting in. I've been voting since 1972. The biggest issue facing our planet is the climate change and the continued destruction of our environment. And the Conservatives are completely bankrupt on this. They have no... In fact, they want to roll back any advances we've made in benefiting the climate. The Conservatives are completely... they only have is slogans, and that's treating the population like they're stupid. All they are going to vote for are slogans. Anyway, the Conservative Party is humbug. And Harper's advertising for Hollywood. Does anybody remember the Harper government? Scientists were marching in the streets to protest the damage done by the Harper government to science and the long-term science programs. And, hey, Hollywood wants to defund the CBC. Anybody listening to this, hey, you better not be voting for Poilievre, or you're not going to be able to listen to CBC anymore. Anyway, my candidate is Elizabeth May. I'm in the Saanich Gulf Islands. She's the most effective MP on Parliament Hill. And the Green policies are so far beyond the other party. And I'm still outraged that they didn't let her onto the debate. Canceling it just hours before the debate, when they moved the whole debate just for a hockey game. I'm totally outraged about that. But no, the Green Party and Elizabeth May, we really need to change what we're doing. We don't need more pipelines. We need more environmental programs. And as I say, the Conservatives, all they have is slogans. They're not even allowing reporters to ask questions. The selected reporters are allowed to ask 2 or 3 questions, but they don't answer any tough questions.
All right. I thank you for sharing that with us, Robert. And Michael, Robert actually brings up a few points that I would like to get into with this. Sure. Yes, we saw with the televised debates that the Greens were not allowed to participate. Did that really cause, did that hamper them or actually give them a little bit more exposure and remind people that they need their support?
Well, I think, paradoxically, for a party that was almost forgotten and in the shadows, the exclusion actually allowed them to grab some immediate attention about that exclusion. I'm not sure if it's really going to contribute much to the overall results finally. It was unfortunate the decision was so late in coming out, but, the criteria were fairly clear that to be eligible to participate, you had to be have a sitting member in the House of Commons, which Greens did. You had to be at least at 4% of national polls, which the Green Party are not. This is one of their lowest levels of national support in over a decade and a half. And thirdly, you needed to be running candidates in at least 90% of the ridings. And for various reasons, the Green Party chose to run candidates in about 2/3 of the ridings. So they fell well short of 2 of the criteria. It was unfortunate that it was done so late in the day. And it's a bit puzzling when the Bloc Quebecois leader was there participating in both debates, even though they're only running candidates in the Quebec riding. So I can see why Canadians were both puzzled and outraged and disappointed. It would have helped, I think. It would have been an invaluable platform for Elizabeth May and her co-leader to be able to be on that platform. It would have changed the dynamics, as we've seen in previous debates where Elizabeth May was able to participate. So it did deny that party a very valuable national exposure. So he's a caller who's lives within the Saanich Gulf Islands riding with Elizabeth May's. The last election, she won that riding with 37%, 38% of the popular vote. And so there's 4 strong candidates in that riding for the Green, Conservative, Liberal, and the NDP. But with polls suggesting that the NDP support is softening, you really have to wonder whether that will benefit Elizabeth May and or the Liberal candidate there. And so that was going to be a fascinating riding to watch election night, because quite frankly, the future of the Green Party and the future of their leader hangs in the balance with the results Monday night.
Yeah. It'll be something to obviously keep track of. And Andrew Pedneau, of course, her co-leader for the party. Bruce in Olympia, thank you for calling into the show today.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. I believe you're calling from Washington.
Yes, I am. And I have dual citizenship, and I've lived in both countries, had businesses in both countries. And here's what's fascinating as I listen and watch your show. First of all, I really appreciate the political scientist from UVic. I went to UVic for a period of time, and I grew up in Victoria and all over Vancouver Island, and still have family in Port Hardy and in Powell River.
Oh, wonderful place to be.
Yep, and I love it, and I plan on moving back at some point. But my point that I want to make right now is that I hear lots of people going, I want. And as much as you want to have all these things, without having a working economy, almost none of it works. If you don't have a good working economy, you can't spend money on climate change. You can't spend money on housing. You can't spend money on the rest, because a good working economy provides the income for government and for people, and all those things work in balance so that you get something for something instead of something for nothing. And I grew up in Canada. I remember being frustrated so often that when it was election time, people wanted something for nothing. And you can't have it. It only works for a short period of time. And after you've given people something for nothing, now you've got to find and pay for the nothing that you didn't cover before. And Canadians still can't seem to, I listened to a caller a minute ago talking about how he wished that we could spend more money on climate change. And why don't they do more about climate change? Well, if these tariffs destroy your economy and Trump continues to destroy your economy like he's destroying ours, and believe me, I'm a businessman down here right now, and my business is the continuity of my business is right now being balanced on a pencil. Because if the tariffs continue to be high to China, we rely on China for so much of everything. And for example, Lowe's and Home Depot, where most of Americans buy probably 90% of their building supplies. Well, when Chinese goods stop going into those places, and you want to do a plumbing job and you can't get parts, it's not good.
No,
and I have a business where I have to import some things, and I can't get them anywhere else. They're just nowhere else I can get them. And if I take the time to do it, it's going to take 1-2 years to go through the prototyping and everything else to get that product. And by that time, I don't know what's going to happen. So I just sit here stalemated, looking at myself in the mirror, wondering what to do, because I could spend hundreds of thousands getting these new products and then find that all of a sudden Trump lowers the tariffs to 5%, or that in the election it's going to be in the United States, and hopefully, God knows that it seems so distant, 2 years.
Oh, I know.
When he loses so much power, it's going to be difficult. But my advice to Canadians is this: first of all, we're not coming after sovereignty. As much as Trump says it, he's an idiot, and no one here believes it. There's not a soul that I've talked to. I could take 100 Americans, line them up here and say, do you want Canada? And they'd all go no. And if you could have Canada, which 100% of them would say no, we're happy with having a great neighbor that you've been for, millennia, it feels like.
Yeah.
I mean, since we've both been countries, Canada's always been our friend, always been our ally, always been who we can count on. And now we are just mystified that this man, this stupid buffoon, can't figure out where his left and right feet are.
Bruce, I'm gonna have to stop you there. I'm so sorry to cut you off, but we have so many calls that I want to get them. But you've shared so many good points with us, and I really appreciate that. And Michael, I could see that you were nodding to many of his points. And one thing I did want to mention, it's sort of what we spoke to yesterday with the environment, that, people want to focus on the environment. It's incredibly important, but they are very worried about these tariffs and what they can afford. I do want to get to a few more calls before we run out of time. So Nina in Vancouver, quickly, what is your issue that's most important to you?
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you for taking my call. I just wanted to quickly say that I am a voter residing in the Vancouver Central riding of downtown Vancouver. I am currently an undecided voter, believe it or not. I have made several efforts to try and reach out to the different parties with questions. Haven't heard back. I have several friends in the area that are also undecided.
Okay.
I haven't seen any sort of engagement from any of the candidates in the Vancouver Central area to actually to even get our votes. I believe that the Liberal Party, with their candidate who is Hedy Fry, I believe she's been a candidate for over 30 years. She's been in Parliament. I have never, ever, in the 35 years I have lived in this area, heard a peep out of her about anything at all. So that's really disappointing. I know that she actually also is known to vote the least in Parliament, which is concerning. As a person that lives in downtown Vancouver, I have seen, like I said, 35 years, so I've seen how downtown Vancouver has changed, and it's really eye-opening as far as safety is concerned.
Nina, can I ask you what is the biggest issue that would change your mind for the vote? What is most important to you in this election?
Well, affordability. Affordability is extremely important. Immigration is extremely important because it's affected me with affordability because of all the immigration, and for whatever reason, why everybody happens to be moved downtown, specifically students, international students that have just kind of taken over downtown. It's very concerning. And of course, the Trump situation is extremely concerning.
It is.
I do like bits and things from every party. So I like some ideas from, one party and some ideas from another. If I could magically combine all of them.
I know. If only there was that ideal candidate that we could find that just speaks to us and tells us what we need to know about every topic. Nina, thank you so much for that. And interesting, Michael, that we do still have people undecided at this point. Do you think that's common, or are most people sort of locked in at this point?
No, research that political scientists do on voting behavior in Canada suggests that there's maybe about half of Canadians who they probably could have voted on the first day of the election campaign, quite frankly. They're identified very closely to one party. They're loyalists or they're partisans. They grew up in a family that identifies with one particular party, but at least half of Canadians watch debates, meet people, go to all candidates' meetings if they're available, think about the issues, and they vote on election day. I mean, we had a huge advanced poll, but we still have most Canadians are going to vote on Monday. And, some people, this weekend is the critical time.
Yeah.
It'll be that last call, that last pamphlet, that last conversation with a neighbor or friend, or a show like this that will, have some kind of impact on them. That's the magical mystery of voting, is that at the end of the day, it's the person alone in a ballot box booth in a polling station marking that X.
Yep.
And Vancouver Centre is an interesting one where Anita lives. I mean, it has been a Liberal stronghold for many years, and polls suggest that it probably could stay that way, depending on what the voter turnout is. But housing affordability, a key issue that we're hearing from a lot of the callers.
All huge. And as you said, we really don't know what somebody's going to vote until they are there with that pencil in hand and making that choice. We'll get a call in from Rob in Grand Forks. Quickly, Rob, what is the big issue for you?
Hello.
Hi.
So I think the biggest issue is Trump's threat to our sovereignty. Whether he's a buffoon or not, he's still the president of the most powerful country in the world.
Absolutely,
and he
our
has
closest ally.
He has a lot of other buffoons around him.
All right.
So I feel that Carney has lied to us already.
Okay.
Trudeau lied to the people of Canada continuously. And I voted for him. Actually, I voted for him the first time. And he was going to change the electoral system. Well, of course, he didn't. He could have changed it, so he held a referendum, knowing that a referendum would people would vote for a continuation of the status quo, because most of them were in Quebec and Ontario, which stands to benefit from the type of voting system we have right now. And Carney has lied to us. He lied to us about his call with Trump, saying that Trump was very respectful of Canada, and later we find out he was not.
All right. I thank you for those points, Rob, and that just speaks to how it's anybody's game at this point. So many people that perhaps were behind Carney hearing this news that he perhaps had omitted some information from his initial call, changing their mind. We'll get in a call quickly now from Charlene on Main Island. Hi, Charlene.
Hi. I'll just say this all quickly. I'm in a riding where I have to vote strategically. I want Carney to win, so I am going to vote for Elizabeth May for two reasons. I am against the Americanization, not necessarily against the sovereignty, but as a whole for Canada. And secondly, I am against Poilievre because I cannot believe so many people get sucked in by slogans and promises to make things affordable, when if you simply ask yourself, when has a Conservative government, or in fact Poilievre, ever voted for anything that is beneficial for us? In general, it is the NDP supporting the Liberals doing those kind of things. Poilievre has voted against pharmacare, childcare, expansion of health funding, and so on and so on. So Elizabeth May gets my vote.
All right. Thank you so much for that. And time for, I think, one last quick call from Brian in Kelowna. Hi, Brian.
Hi there.
Hi. What issue is most important to you?
Oops. Oh, sorry, my dog's barking. I'm just mostly concerned about the tariffs that's going on, and we have to combat Trump because it's gonna be okay, I think, because he doesn't have much time left.
Fair enough. Well, he was just reelected, so it remains to be seen how long Trump will be in power. But he does have much of his campaign, or much of his term left. And Michael, before I let you go, regardless of who wins this election, we obviously have a lot of people that are very invested in it. What should the new government's first order of business be? Is it Trump?
Certainly, if Mark Carney gets elected, I think it would be very much about Canada-U.S. relations. We've got the latest statements by Mr. Trump concern the auto sector again. There's also continuing concerns about the softwood lumber, which is incredibly important for the forestry industry here in British Columbia. So the threats to our economy and our prosperity, putting aside issues of sovereignty, but just everyday quality of life and economic well-being, these are clear and present threats to be taken seriously. And so I would think that if it was Mr. Poilievre, he's promised 100 days of action. Probably that would mean bringing back Parliament sooner rather than later. Mr. Carney may, will there be a calling of Parliament before the summer? We'll have to see. But, there'll be different styles. But a lot of the issues, regardless of who wins, are going to be there. Housing's not going away, affordability, the climate issues. It's just how much they'll be a priority in the first budget that would be brought down perhaps later this spring or in the fall. The challenge is so much uncertainty around the economic global conditions that, this election's not giving people a solid platform that you could bet your house on in terms of really expecting they're going to deliver on. There have been promises, but a lot of them really are contingent on our trade relations with the United States and our success in diversifying our trade with other countries. So it's a historic election, but it's also going to be an historic governing period over the next couple of years as well.
It certainly will be. Michael, it's been so wonderful to have you with us. We had so many calls. I didn't get to ask you all the questions, but we'll have to chat again soon.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Michael Prince, a political scientist at the University of Victoria. And we also want to acknowledge Pope Francis's funeral, which will be held tomorrow at St. Peter's Square. His body will lie in state in St. Peter's Basilica until this evening, allowing the people to pay their respects. The funeral service will be presided over by Cardinal Giovanni Battista Re. Leaders from Italy, France, Germany, Britain, the United States, and Argentina will join. Prime Minister Mark Carney will skip the Pope's funeral, and instead Canada will be represented by Governor General Mary Simon. Watch the live coverage of the service, hosted by Heather Hiscock, starting at 12 a.m. Pacific time. The funeral begins at 1 a.m. Pacific time. And that is it for our show. Thanks for calling in and joining the discussion. You can always email us, bctoday@cbc.ca.